Welcome to the Lifelong Project Podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Phillips. I'm the author of several books on project management, and I'm the instructor for many courses on project management found on Pearson Education, Udemy.com, and Instructing.com. Hey everybody, Joe Phillips here. Welcome back to the Lifelong Project Podcast. I want to start this podcast by giving a thanks to a lot of different people. Last week was pretty exciting for me. Maybe exciting's not the right word, but out of nowhere, I had this gallbladder attack. I mean, just really tore me up. And I went to the emergency room and they poked around on me and did all their tests and gave me some pain medicine and said, well, maybe it'll get better. We're going to send you home. Well, it did not get better. At about 2 o'clock in the morning, my wife said, we're going back to the ER. I was on the floor crying like a baby. Worst pain I've ever felt in my life. And maybe I am a baby. But anyway, we went back to the ER. And again, they poked around on me and gave me some more morphine. And that made me go to sleep. And maybe that's what they wanted because I was such a whiner. But I was just miserable. Boy, next thing you know, they are taking me in to surgery. And a few hours later, I'm done and heading home. I mean, just absolutely amazing. And so it caused some interruptions in my work. And so I had some people pick up the slack for me on my online classes and with my clients. And even in this podcast, trying to record this thing and get it done. Caused an interruption there. So a lot of you heard about this, and I shared some of that in our Facebook group, and you all sent me some notes and some kind comments, and that was really fun to read and encouraging. So I thank you for that. But it's amazing, just a little over a week, I am walking around like nothing ever happened. I feel tremendous, so much better. And so I'm really thankful for those of you who helped me in my business. A couple of you, Angela that works with me, did a tremendous job. And some folks online in our news groups and on Udemy really picked up the slack while I was out. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate all of you that gave me some great comments there that really helped as I just got better and worked through that. But feel great now and ready to move forward, right? Keep moving forward. Well, in today's podcast, I want to talk about a really important attribute for project managers and for our lives, and that is willingness. A few years ago, I was managing a project and I had a team member that no matter what was suggested, that wasn't going to work. That some pushback had to be some twist to something, and no matter what it was, it just wasn't going to work out. Just a pain to work with this guy. Well, it turns out this individual just really didn't want to do the project. They were not willing to do the work. And so the individual moved on to something else, thankfully, and we got another resource in, and she knocked it out and got it done like a champ, like anyone should do in their job. But willingness is an attribute that I think is really important in our lives as a project manager and really in our lives as individuals, that you have to be willing to do what other people are not willing to do in order to do the things that you want to do. So in other words, you got to do what it takes. And so willingness is the ability to do whatever it takes to get things done. Project management is really all about getting things done. Or sometimes I say GSD, and I'll say it here, get stuff done, GSD. We got to get things done, but you have to be willing to do it. You ever have someone like, when my son was just a little tyke, he would go clean his room, but he sure didn't want to, wasn't very willing. And it would take him, what could be 15 minutes, ended up taking the guy an hour, and it was still kind of sloppy and not perfect because he did not want to clean his room. He wasn't willing to do the work to get it done. Well, willingness is that ability that you are willing and able and competent, and you're going to do whatever it takes. So willingness is to go after it and to get it done. So what are you willing to do in your personal life? You think about those of you who are going for your PMP. Are you willing to do what it takes to earn that PMP? The time, the financial investment, studying, that anxiety you feel, actually showing up and passing the exam. Are you willing to do that? But I meet people all the time that their willingness is captured by, well, if I buy this class and this class and this class and this book, so I buy all these resources. That's not really willingness. Willingness to earn the PMP is not spending the money on the equipment or the books or the training. It's to get in and dig in and do the work. So you have to be willing to prioritize and to put the time in and to do the effort. It's just like, I'm willing to buy the gym membership, but until you show up and do the work, it really doesn't count. It's really not going to help much. So what are you willing to do to reach your project priorities? So what are you willing to do to reach your goals and your ambitions? What are you willing to do today to reach your project priorities? Well, this all begins way back in planning. Like we talked about in the last podcast about gathering requirements and building out that scope. Well, we have to map out the work that needs to be done, that people have to be willing to do in order to reach those goals. Well, sometimes we look at a big stack of work and it just can seem very, very daunting. So, for example, I've written several books, and you look at one of those books, it's pretty chunky. I mean, 600-700 pages. And sometimes when I'm starting out, I'm like, I am never going to get this done. I mean, I know that I'll get it done, but I don't look at 600 or 700 pages. I take that and I break it down. And so now I have, 8, 9, 10, 13 chapters. Well, that's a little bit more manageable, 13 chapters versus 800 pages. And then you look at the first chapter and then you look at the sections. So you begin to break it down into smaller and smaller pieces. It's just like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. When you think about doing a little bit, it's a lot easier than looking at doing the whole bunch in one setting. So the same we do in project management, right? We have the scope and we decompose that into the work breakdown structure, down to the work packages. Those equate to or lead us to our activities. And then our activities, we fit into that 880 model. That the 880 rule is your biggest activity should be no larger than 80 hours, or it's too big, and no less than 8 hours. That's just a good heuristic. Doesn't mean it always has to be that way, but it's kind of the window that I aim for when I am creating work packages with my team. So when you take the work and you break it down and make it smaller and smaller, it's easier to manage than to have this great big chunk that you have to do. Now, another thing that we have to do in our lives when we think about being willing is a trick that I do is I do a little time travel. I imagine myself off in the future. And I think about what would my life be like if I don't get this done, if I don't achieve this? What's that regret going to feel like? And what would it be like without having that victory in my life? So by looking forward and thinking about what's the void that this creates allows me to think about regret. And I can think, well, why have regret? Why is that? Why could that regret be in my life? Or why do I have regret in my life? And maybe you feel the same way. Well, regret is really comes about because of fear and doubt when we think about goals. So if you're aiming to pass your PMP or another certification, or you've got a big project, or you're talking yourself out of applying for a particular job, often fear and doubt are what are plaguing us. So fear and doubt are really the parents of regret. That when you have fear, you don't move forward, or you have doubts, you don't move forward, you doubt yourself, and then you have regret. Well, regrets, they're empty and they make us feel bad, of course, but they don't contribute to value. So we have to combat fear and doubt. Well, in project management, sometimes we have to combat fear and doubt for our stakeholders. So we think about planning and gathering requirements, and they can't always see the whole vision, or they can't see the time and the monies. And so they're a little scared. What if this project doesn't work out? They're very risk averse. Well, that risk averse is really fear and doubt. That until they buy in, until that fear is alleviated, they're going to doubt the success of the project, and they're really not committed. They're really not willing to let your project move forward or to give you a reign over your project. So one of the tools that I use when I suspect that's the case with a stakeholder is I want to tackle that fear by showing some quick wins. So I look for some low-hanging fruit that has value for the customer, and that's what we go after first. So what's something we can get done quickly in the project that has value, that has meaning, and then let's go get that and get it done, and then I can show the stakeholder and that we're making great progress, and then here is some communication, and we're moving forward. And that helps alleviate that fear and doubt. As we give more and more victories, the fear and doubts begin to diminish, and our project begins rolling. So fear and doubt and being willing, and then avoiding regret by taking action. All right, thanks again for listening to the Lifelong Project Podcast. I appreciate your time, and keep those questions coming. That as these emails come in, I'm going to be sorting through these and finding some new topics and different topics that you want to talk about or questions you might have. So send me a note. It's joe@lifelongproject.com. Thanks again. Keep moving forward.